In the shadowy marshes of coastal Georgia, where live oaks drip with gray moss, and the Altamaha River guards its darkest secrets, lies a tale buried for over a century. At Willowbrook Plantation in 1863, as the Civil War raged, 73 enslaved souls vanished in a single night. 17 family members died under mysterious circumstances, and a forbidden wedding was planned between 67-year-old Reginald Hawthorne and his 16-year-old granddaughter, Victoria Elise. Hidden in courthouse basements and whispered in the corners of Georgia's planter elite, this story unveils a secret society, the Sentinels of Pristine Lineage, obsessed with preserving a cursed bloodline through unspeakable acts. When Victoria uncovers a hidden graveyard of 317 numbered graves and her grandfather's plot to murder her, she turns the tables with a chilling revenge. Join us as we unearth this haunting saga of madness, murder, and a young woman's sacrifice. Subscribe now and tell us your state in the comments as we dive into America's veiled past.
Deep within the marshes of coastal Georgia, where live oaks drip with gray moss and the Altamaha River hides its deepest mysteries, lies a tale so chilling that local chroniclers have spent over a century attempting to scrub it from public archives. In 1863, as Confederate artillery boomed across far-off fronts, something far more malevolent than battle was brewing at Willowbrook Plantation. 73 enslaved souls disappeared without explanation in one night. 17 family members perished under enigmatic conditions within 6 months. And at the heart of it all, a wedding rite so taboo that attendees were bound to silence on pain of execution. The alliance between 67-year-old Reginald Hawthorne and his 16-year-old granddaughter, Victoria Elise Hawthorne. What you're about to hear has been entombed in courthouse cellars, locked in private lineage crypts, and murmured only in the shadowed recesses of Georgia's planter elite. Before we delve into the doomed heritage of Willowbrook, be sure to subscribe to our channel and share in the comments which state you're tuning in from this evening. The documents that endured the enigmatic blaze of 1889 at the Chatham County Courthouse offer only shards of this terror. But those shards depict a saga of inherited insanity, premeditated slaughter, and a plot that extended into the uppermost echelons of Georgia's cotton baronage. Willowbrook Plantation stretched across 8,000 acres of fertile Georgia cotton fields, its neoclassical manner emerging from the steamy soil like a testament to pre-war opulence. Erected in 1834 by Archibald Hawthorne, a British émigré who amassed riches in the cotton trade, the domain epitomized all the antebellum South yearned to embody: affluent, dominant, and ruthlessly dedicated to game. By 1863, the third year of the Civil War, Willowbrook had faded from its past splendor. Union embargoes had choked the cotton market, Confederate scrip had turned to valueless scraps, and federal troops were inexorably advancing through Georgia. The estate's lord, Reginald Hawthorne, had inherited not merely immense riches, but also the peculiar rituals and fixations of his Anglo-Georgian ancestry. Reginald was a commanding presence, towering over 6 feet, with sharp blue eyes that pierced a person's essence. His visage, etched by years of Georgia heat, bore a notable scar from his left cheek to chin, a relic from a youthful skirmish, evoking both awe and dread in all who met him. He clad himself eternally in black, a trait that dubbed him the Crow among the plantation's enslaved folk. The Hawthorne clan had always diverged from other planter dynasties. While peers forged fortunes via standard practices, the Hawthornes upheld covert ties to the vestiges of Georgia's colonial British gentry and observed customs predating even Savannah's establishment. They affiliated with a hidden order called the Sentinels of Pristine Lineage, an assembly rooted in medieval England, insisting that select pedigrees held virtues demanding preservation at all costs. This order, functioning in utter secrecy across Georgia's coastal counties, held that calculated unions within precise family strains would safeguard not only wealth and status, but something profoundly esoteric: what they termed the ancestral essence. Members bore elaborate gold amulets etched with a contorted lineage emblem, convening monthly at sites known solely to the elect. Reginald had been a widower for 7 years, his spouse Arabella succumbing in 1856 to what the family doctor tactfully noted as fever, though estate servants murmured of odd bruises on her limbs, implying a fiercer demise. Their son, Edmund Hawthorne, had wed a striking young lady named Sophia Beaumont in 1845, and the pair bore one offspring, Victoria Elise Hawthorne, born in 1847. Calamity had trailed the Hawthorne blood like a bloodhound. Edmund and Sophia had died in a buggy mishap in 1863 as the Union Army clenched its hold on Georgia. The formal account claimed their steeds panicked from cannonade in a nearby clash, hurling their vehicle into a swamp where both drowned. Yet multiple observers noted the wreck happening hours prior to any combat in the vicinity, and the buggy showed an axle intentionally sabotaged, marks indicating foul play over mishap. This rendered 16-year-old Victoria Elise the lone successor to the Hawthorne estate, positioning her as one of the richest youths in war-ravaged Georgia. She was, by every report, remarkably lovely, with the refined traits cherished by planter society: fair skin, auburn hair cascading in spirals to her hips, and vivid hazel eyes that shifted hue in varying illumination. But beyond her allure, Victoria held a wit that disquieted elders. She was proficient in French, Latin, and English, educated to a level matching most gentlemen, and exhibited a disconcerting knack for piercing the deceptions and facades of surrounding adults. The plantation harbored grim enigmas, far exceeding slavery's routine savageries. Willowbrook's slave lodgings were laid out in an atypical configuration, not the standard aligned rows of most estates, but an intricate geometric layout that aerially resembled a vast ceremonial ring.
The enslaved inhabitants dwelled in perpetual terror, not solely of their owner's lash, but of something vastly more ominous. Regional myths spoke of the Willowbrook vanishings, enslaved persons evaporating sans rationale, their absence rationalized as fugitives or plague victims. But the reality was vastly more harrowing. Buried in the estate's remotest tracts, concealed under a stand of venerable live oaks veiled in gray moss, rested a burial ground absent from any formal charts. Here, rough timber stakes displayed no names, merely numerals gouged into aged wood. By 1863, those tallied plots had surpassed 300. On the dawn of September 15, 1863, as fall fog ascended from the marshes and Confederate runaways slunk like phantoms through Georgia's wilds, Reginald Hawthorne issued a declaration that stunned even the calloused denizens of the planter belt. He planned to wed his granddaughter, Victoria Elise, in a rite slated within the month. The revelation occurred amid what ought to have been a standard conference with his foreman, Marcel Dubois, a savage figure whose tactics had garnered notoriety for brutality even by antebellum Georgia norms. Dubois, a wiry man with shrewd gaze and palms eternally tainted by snuff, was surveying the estate's dire fiscal plight when Reginald cut in with utterances that blanched the tough foreman's countenance. The remedy to our woes resides not in divesting acreage or curtailing labors, Reginald stated, his tone bearing the serene assurance of an unchallenged man. It dwells in an archaic clause of our lineage charter, one my forebears sagely embedded when framing the estate's juridical base. He drew from his bureau a hidebound dossier, its copper clasps verdigris with era, its hide marred by ages of use. From inside he extracted a sheaf of folios, scripted in obsolete English legalese, the pigment dulled to sepia, yet decipherable. As he intoned aloud, his timbre assumed a near liturgical rhythm. Per the inaugural charter of Willowbrook Plantation, instituted by Crown Grant in 1834, all terrains, holdings, and assets shall abide within the direct descent of the Hawthorne lineage eternally.
Should scenarios emerge imperiling this descent's continuity, crisis measures may be invoked to uphold the patriarchal bequest. His digit followed the ornate calligraphy as he pressed on. These measures encompass the patriarch's prerogative to unite with any direct female progeny solely to sustain familial dominion over all estates and resources. Dubois gaped at his patron in dumbfounded hush. Even in Georgia, where planter kin had long orchestrated tactical kin weddings to guard fortunes, what Reginald outlined transcended societal norms. It was not just atypical, it was a sacrilege, defying both statute and essence.
"Sir," Dubois at last uttered, "you cannot mean this. The lass is your granddaughter. Such a bond would be—" "Such a bond," Reginald interjected, "would be wholly lawful under our charter's crisis clauses. More vitally, it would guarantee Willowbrook stays under Hawthorne's sway, as Providence and our forebears decreed." The foreman's protests withered as he spied something that iced his veins. About Reginald's throat, scarcely visible under his crisp collar, dangled a gold amulet Dubois had glimpsed before, adorned by fellow planters in Georgia's most clandestine and potent circles. The amulet displayed the icon of a warped lineage tree, its limbs entwining in designs that pained the sight to trace. That dusk, as tempests amassed over the estate and bolts flashed like ordnance, Reginald beckoned Victoria to his library. The space was a sanctuary to the Hawthorne legacy. Canvas portraits of grim progenitors adorned the panels, their stares appearing to pursue intruders. Hide-clad tomes logging cotton yields, slave acquisitions, and monetary dealings crammed lofty shelves, whilst the grand oak desk showcased relics from the clan's British roots. An intricate letter knife, once Archibald Hawthorne's, a glass inkpot bestowed by a Georgia senator, and a trove of parchment sealed with crimson wax and cord. Victoria entered with the poised grace instilled since infancy, but her hazel eyes betrayed a fatigue absent before her parents' passing. She had grown ever more dubious of her grandfather's accounts for the sundry woes dogging their kin, and an element in his late conduct had triggered every self-defense impulse she owned. "Sit, my child," Reginald bade, motioning to a seat opposite his desk. The setup compelled her to face away from the room's sole portal, a nuance she noted keenly. "We must confer on your prospects and the destiny of all your kin has forged." As peals echoed across the plantation lands, Reginald delineated his scheme with the systematic exactitude of a man months in rehearsal. He discoursed on kin obligation, ancestral duties, the hallowed charge entrusted to their vein. His timbre bore a mesmeric timbre crafted to soothe auditors into acquiescence. But Victoria fixated not on his oratory, but on the subtle cues unveiling his core. The manner his digits wrapped the desk in motifs echoing the twisted tree on his amulet, the way his gaze evaded direct contact with hers, and most alarming, the faint grin teasing his lips as he referenced her parents' fresh demise. "The nuptials shall occur on October 13th, he wrapped up, as if declaring a commercial pact. "The observance will be intimate, graced only by those grasping the sanctified essence of what we safeguard. You will, naturally, accede to this setup." It was no plea. It was an edict issued with the utter dominion of a man never thwarted in his cravings. But as Victoria peered into her grandfather's eyes, she beheld something more freezing than his speech, the icy scheming of a hunter who had snared his ideal quarry.
The weeks post Reginald's proclamation morphed Willowbrook Plantation into a bastion besieged. Tidings of the intended wedding had inexplicably seeped past the estate's confines, despite kin efforts at concealment, and the backlash from Georgia's planter gentry was prompt and resolute. Various adjacent estate clans, including the potent Dubois and Whitaker lines, dispatched delicately phrased missives voicing unease over the pact. Even in a culture habituated to calculated unions among remote kin, what Reginald suggested breached barriers never violated afore. But the most unsettling retorts hailed from the sentinels of pristine lineage's own ranks.
3 distinct midnight calls brought order envoys to Willowbrook's thresholds, each donning the gold amulet affording entry to Reginald's secluded library. These parleys, held in muted English and concluding with visitors slipping away pre-dawn, left the estate's lord progressively restless and erratic. Victoria, concurrently, had launched her probe into the kin's authentic chronicle. Employing aptitudes honed from years overseeing domestic ledgers and letters, she commenced assembling data from texts, eavesdropped dialogues, and astute scrutiny of her grandfather's demeanor. What she unearthed sketched a vista far more appalling than her gravest misgivings intimated. Her parents' end, she discerned, was no fluke. Concealed amid her father's papers, she unearthed proof of a fierce dispute between Edmund and Reginald. Mere days ere the buggy catastrophe, Edmund had unearthed something on the kin's finances. Namely, testimony that Reginald had been methodically siphoning estate funds and vending enslaved clans to mask wagering liabilities and order commitments. More ruinous yet, Edmund had unearthed his sire's entanglement with the sentinels of pristine lineage and vowed to unmask their deeds to Union officials. The clash had peaked in Edmund's resolve to spirit Victoria from Willowbrook forever, ferrying her to kin in Savannah till war's close, whence they could flee beyond Reginald's grasp. But the vehicle bearing them from the estate never attained its goal. Even more harrowing was what Victoria unearthed on the estate's veiled burial ground. Via charts from her father's belongings, she pinpointed the graveyard and pursued her inquiry. What she encountered defied grasp. The tallied plots signified not decades of demises, they denoted a methodical purge ongoing since the estate's inception. The interred weren't nearly enslaved felled by ailment or toil. They were folk who had gleaned excess on the Hawthorne kin's pursuits or menaced their arcana. Many plots were undersized for grown frames. Some so fresh the soil overhead remained unsettled. And most chilling, several bore dates post her parents' passing, implying Reginald had prepped for likely resistance to his schemes by eternally muting potential interlopers. By October 10th, but 3 days ere the planned rite, Victoria rendered a verdict sealing all at Willowbrook Plantation's fates. She would not be a meek casualty of her grandfather's derangement. If doomed, she would drag as many of the sentinels of pristine lineage with her as feasible. But first, she must assure their offenses would not be obscured or veiled as myriad others had. She commenced penning exhaustive epistles detailing all she'd gleaned on the order, the concealed graveyard, and her grandfather's plots. These missives, directed to Savannah Gazette scribes, union overseers, and eminent clerical heads, would serve as her safeguard, but she also primed for swifter retribution. In the estate's vast herb plot, tended by aged enslaved dames holding lore handed through eras, Victoria started amassing components for a blend suiting her aims flawlessly. The flora she reaped, belladonna, hemlock, jimsonweed, and sundry, were routine in folk remedies, but turned lethal venoms when concocted by one versed in their traits. As nuptial prep swirled round her, Victoria beamed and enacted the dutiful granddaughter, whilst meticulously plotting the ruin of all complicit in her kin's terror reign.
The morn of October 13th, 1863, broke with an untimely frost, seeming to infiltrate every bone at Willowbrook Plantation. Gray moss dangled static from the antique oaks, as if the atmosphere grew too dense to quiver, and the customary estate clamor, birds trilling, bugs humming, laborers hailing, was uncannily mute. Even beasts appeared to intuit something unnatural impending. As the sun ascended, hurling elongated shades over the fields, affiliates of the sentinels of pristine lineage commenced arriving for the rite. They materialized not via coaches or steeds, which might draw Union scouts or prying neighbors, but by stealthier paths, reaching nocturnally and lurking in estate sheds till the designated hour. Each bore the hallmark gold amulet, marking him a sentinel of pristine lineage, and each bore himself with the hubris of one deeming himself beyond mortal edict and celestial verdict.
Among arrivals was Dr. Victor Langston, a healer whose Savannah clinic had built him fame for tact in affairs other medics shunned. Langston's attendants fulfilled manifold roles. He would preside over the rite via order-bestowed power and stand ready for any health snags. His ebony healer satchel, ever close, held tools employed for aims distant from cure. Also attendant was Judge Elias Whitaker, whose station in Georgia's judiciary let him forge formal texts legitimizing even the shadiest deals. Whitaker had devoted his vocation to shielding order affiliates from legal fallout, his skill in altering court logs, making myriad thorny issues vanish utterly. His presence assured the bond, however odious, would be juridically valid and duly logged. The third pivotal persona was Captain Marcus Blackwell, whose links to both Confederate command and clandestine webs ferrying folk and wares through war-scarred Georgia rendered him priceless to the order's workings. Blackwell had forged his repute via barbarities shocking even seasoned troopers, his modes for handling witnesses or barriers fabled amid order ranks. As afternoon waned to eve, the nuptial preps assumed an ever more liturgical air, exceeding conventional marital mores. The rite would unfold, not in the estate's lavish chief salon, but in the manor's cellar, a granite-walled vault built for intense Archibald Hawthorne never divulged to heirs. The barriers bore glyphs incised deep in rock, motifs seeming to morph in the wavering taper glow, forging a milieu fitter for heathen sacrament than Christian vow. Reginald had demanded personal oversight of every facet, from black taper's array round the vault to witnesses' seat placements. His conduct all day grew progressively frenzied, as if the nearing rite unleashed something long restrained. He conversed oft with vacant space, dialoguing with phantasm forebearers, and his gaze adopted a vitreous sheen, hinting lunacy or narcotic sway. Victoria, meantime, had passed the day in her chamber, ostensibly prepping for the rite, but truly finalizing her vengeance scheme. The blend she'd brewed from the estate's toxic flora was primed, portioned into measures yielding varied impacts per quantity ingested. Some allotments for swift demise, others for delayed onset, permitting her to evade blame till too late. Her bridal gown, a white satin and English lace heirloom from her grandmother, was modified with concealed compartments for the tiny files holding her bruise. To observers, she seemed but a petrified maiden readying to yield to uncontrollable fates. But behind her hazel eyes lurked a scheming acumen inheriting all her grandfather's ferocity, whilst keeping the ethical lucidity he'd long forsaken. As eve neared and the rite's hour approached, Victoria added one ultimate touch to her preps. From her mother's gem casket, she fetched a tiny gold pendant handed through the clan's female descent for ages. Within the pendant, instead of customary likeness or tress, she inserted a slip inscribed in her neat script, "The vices of Willowbrook Plantation conclude with me." At exactly 8 o'clock, a squalls amassed afar, and thunder growled like nearing divine retribution's tread. Reginald rapped at Victoria's portal to guide her to what he deemed his clan's apex. When she unlatched and grasped his limb, her grin was so tranquil and yielding, he missed the faint swell in her gown, where files nestled against her frame, or how her idle hand fondled something veiled in her skirt's pleats. "Prepared, my dear?" he queried, his tone quivering with eagerness. "I've never been readier for aught," Victoria retorted, and that assertion's verity surpassed her grandfather's conception.
Willowbrook Plantation's cellar vault had transmuted into something seeming exterior to time and propriety. Black tapers and geometric formations hurled capering shades on rock barriers carved with pre-Christian glyphs in Georgia's soil. The ether thickened with frankincense smoldering in copper braziers, yielding a syrupy dulcet masking but faintly the basal reek of moist dirt and something graver, the persistent stench of demise oozing from the rock. The order affiliates ringed the impromptu altar, their gold amulets snaring taper gleam and rebounding it in motifs seeming to stir with malign vitality, each garbed in gala evening wear despite the vault locale, as if costly garb could dignify the horror they poised to behold. Dr. Langston stationed at the altar, a hide-clad tome in grasp resembling no orthodox sacred writ. The book was sheathed in what looked human pelt, its leaves aged yellow and scrawled in script writhing in the flickering radiance. This was the order's profane canon, a compendium of sacraments and creeds amassed over eras of enacting their distorted vain safeguard dogma. As Reginald escorted Victoria down the granite steps, the vault's chill deepened markedly. Sundry tapers wavered nigh extinction, prompting Judge Whittaker to whisper on ethereal perturbation, a term laden for order adherents believing their sacraments swayed natural powers. Victoria advanced with the bride's graceful poise, but keen observers might note her eyes ceaselessly scanning, inventorying each man's stance, marking egresses and makeshift arms, gauging vectors and spans with a commander's accuracy. Her grandfather, inebriated by his potency and mission, discerned none. The sacrament commenced with Dr. Langston reciting excerpts from the order's banned text, his timbre adopting a metrical chant aimed to evoke trance in partakers and beholders. The verbiage mingled warped Latin, antique English, and idioms no extant soul should utter. As he orated, fellow ordermen initiated a bass drone harmonizing his voice, birthing a resonance vibrating the rock barriers and manor bases. Captain Blackwell posted near the vault's lone ingress, purportedly to bar disruption but truly to bar pre-rite egress. His palm rested lax on a dragoon blade seeing vast wartime employ, his gaze ever roving for defiance or flight sign. Judge Whittaker stood primed with juridical texts to formalize the union. His quill hovered o'er parchments crafted with his customary meticulousness for order labors. These texts would not merely sanction the bond, but cede full legal helm of Victoria's legacy to her spouse, assuring Reginald unfettered Hawthorne fortune access. As the sacrament advanced, something unforeseen ensued. Various ordermen evinced bodily woe, perspiring copiously despite chill, gasping as if the vault's air thickened beyond inhalation, and teetering as equilibrium faltered. Dr. Langston first described these to rite's emotive fervor, but as more showed akin ills, he suspected alternate influence. None grasped that Victoria had spent the noon subtly infusing her brews into vault sundries. The frankincense in copper braziers bore a mild mind-altering agent fostering bewilderment. The post-rite celebratory claret held delayed venom, ineffectual till hours post-quaff. Even tapers burned treated to emit noxious fumes, intensifying with duration. But Victoria's coup awaited. As Dr. Langston hit the right segment for ring swap and sealing kiss, she acted with an assassin's timing and finesse. "Ere we advance," she declared, her tone slicing the chant with glassy sharpness, "I deem something merits sharing with all here." The abrupt halt birthed instant vault silence. Reginald pivoted to his granddaughter with shock swiftly blackening to ire, but ere he voiced, Victoria pressed with a grin both comely and fearsome. "My beloved grandfather has imparted much on the sentinels of pristine lineage's hallowed rites, and I wish to venerate them by readying a special sacrament for all." From her gown's hidden folds, she drew a gold salver bearing petite crystal goblets, each brimmed with seeming holy claret. This vintage hails from vines rooted in our kin graveyard's earth, the covert one, entombing so many nuisances o'er years. Her words' impact was instant and galvanic. Sundry order men recoiled, visages paling as their guardedest arcana surfaced. Captain Blackwell's palm instinctually sought his arm, but he paused, unsure if the maiden posed genuine peril or mere frantic claims. Reginald, though, instantly knew his granddaughter grasped far excess. His guise of oncular care dissolved, bearing the glacial calculus ever lurking. "You daft whelp," he hissed, his whisper conveying more threat than bellows. "You fathom not the powers you tamper." Victoria's grin held as she lifted a goblet in feigned salute. "Oh, but I do, grandfather. I grasp precisely what I tamper. I know the slays, the interred corpses, the order's vain purification trials. I know you slew my parents when they sought to halt you, and that you schemed my post-rite demise." The vault strain grew nigh palpable. Every attendee knew they'd hit absolute crux. Either they'd finalize their sacrament and erase Victoria's menace, or generations' labors would unmask and crumble. "What I seek," Victoria pursued, still goblet aloft, "is which of you sirs dares quaff first from your evil's yield." The hush post-Victoria's dare lingered eternally, rent only by taper sputters and ordermen's labored gasps as poisoned ether peaked. In that instant, all new returns threshold passed. What ensued would decree not mere Hawthorne fate, but the sentinels of pristine lineage's future. Captain Blackwell first moved, unsheathing his blade fluidly and aiming at Victoria's neck. "Enough games, girl. You'll conclude the rite and forget your fancies on kin annals." But Victoria prepped for this. As steel neared, she purposely dropped her goblet. It fragmented on rock, the claret hissing and fuming on ancient stone, loosing vapors prompting all to recoil alarmed. That claret, she said serenely, was brewed from hemlock blooms, belladonna fronds, and other flora wild in our fair Georgia marshes, the same flora your order used ages to erase bothers, the same blends that felled my parents when their buggy steeds fed venom-tainted fodder pre-journey.
Dr. Langston, his healer lore recognizing ramifications, darted for his satchel, but Victoria's words halted him blood-chilled. "I'd not grasped tools yet, Doctor. See, every vault soul's already dosed with gauged toxins. The frankincense inhaled bears nerve agents. The prep claret quaffed holds bloodstream venoms. Even tapers burn chemicals deadlier with linger. Judge Whittaker, his juridical wit seizing import, advanced palms up in hoped pacific pose. Miss, if you bear grudges against your grandfather, juridical avenues exist for redress. No call for harm." Victoria's mirth rebounded off rock like shattering crystal. "Juridical avenues, Judge Whittaker? You've spent your vocation barring such avenues from tackling the sentinels of pristine lineage's offenses. How many texts forged? How many demise writs signed unquestioned? How many slays veiled hind your juridical slights?" The judge blanched as his misdeeds surfaced documented. But ere reply, Reginald advanced with fury radiating every fiber. "You thankless harpy," he growled, his veneer of decorum finally shattered. "Grasp you the forfeits I've made for our kin's heritage, what I've wrought to assure Hawthorne endures eras?" "I grasp precisely," Victoria countered, her tones steel-honed. "I unearthed your logs, grandfather, every slay noted, every corpse indexed, 317 plots in your covert graveyard for 317 barring your aims. Enslaved gleaning excess on order deeds, neighbor planters posing awkward queries, officials unbribable, own kin menacing exposure." As she spoke, she retreated toward seeming solid rock, but hiding a covert way, one of manifold escapes Archibald Hawthorne embedded in the estate for now evident motives. "My parents unearthed your doings, she pressed, voice first rising emotive. "They found your thefts, slays, order ties. They meant to whisk me from Willowbrook, from you and your pristine lineage schemes." Reginald's retort was a bellow, quaking vault basis. "They were frail, lacked vision for our edifice, fortitude for necessities." "What you edificed," Victoria riposted, "was a realm of demise and woe. What you styled fortitude was coward's frailty to face deed's reckonings." Captain Blackwell, seeing containment lost, hefted blade and charged Victoria to end her peril eternally. But the maiden inherited exceed her grandfather's wit. She gained his survival drive and resolve for goal attainment. As steel arced, Victoria activated the covert mechanism, concurrently hurling her salver's remnants at advancing ordermen. Crystal fragmented against rock, loosing toxic clouds, promptly impacting all. Dr. Langston shrieked as acid seared his sight, blinding temp and toppling him into Judge Whittaker. Captain Blackwell's thrust veered as coordination lapsed, neurovenom peaking motor toll, but Reginald, propelled by rage transcending venom, persisted chasing his granddaughter as she vanished into covert. His voice trailed her darkward, bearing reprisal vows, more horrific for a man-proven vow-keeper. "You can't flee your essence," he thundered, words echoing stone halls. "The sentinel's vein courses your blood. You'll morph to my likeness, 'cause 'tis our kin's destiny." Behind, the vault devolved to utter pandemonium. Victoria's venoms hit zenith, ordermen suffering hallucinations to full debility. Dr. Langston's satchel, forsaken in torment, clawed his visage, screaming visions of his aided slays. Judge Whittaker slumped 'gainst altar, frame spasming as delayed venoms coursed. But grimmest was Captain Blackwell, retaining awareness to comprehend his plight. As toxins hit nerves, he hallucinated vividly every wartime and order victim. He flailed blade at spectral foes, voice ascending in war whoop, once terrorizing Union ranks, now wailing mad dissent. Meantime, Victoria traversed covert ways with assurance from weeks mapping estate's subterranean net. These rock-hewn halls, crafted by enslaved artisans whose layouts perished with them, linked manor zones and scattered estate exits. Her aim wasn't flight, but justice consummation. The arcane vault she emerged held months amassed proof, texts, images, tangible order offense testimony spanning decades. Crucially, it held finale phase material. As she hastened, prepping scheme's end, her grandfather's nearing voice echoed, pursuit unyielding despite rear mayhem. His hallwards unveiled his derangement's abyss. "The bond shall consummate," he yelled, voice straining. "The vein shall endure. Forebears command it." When Reginald located Victoria's refuge vault, he found her poised calm by a board laden with blasts from estate sources, powder from armory, chemicals from cotton gins, flammables assuring utter manor base ruin. "Too tardy, grandfather," she said, tone final, making him halt. "Your offense is proof already en route to Savannah officials. Letters prepped weeks past, delivered morn by folk unlinked to this estate. No motive for falsehood." The elder eyed his granddaughter with awe-horror blend. "You orchestrated all from the outset? From my wedding edict? From unearthing your parental slay," amended. "All, since this instant." The elder's frame drooped, grasping his month schemes, countered by one with his wit and ferocity, sans ethical rot. "What seek you?" he queried, voice abruptly aging his 67 years. "I seek your grasp of something pre-end," Victoria replied. "You ever deemed strength from evil willingness, power as hurt sans fallout, but true strength from forfeit all, to shield blameless, even self-forfeit." As she spoke, she ignited a lucifer over readied wick. Flame hurled wall shades, lighting faces with flicker, unveiling core disparity. One serene resolve, other terror of deeds reckoning. "The sentinels of pristine lineage's vein halts here, with me and thee." The blast, razing Willowbrook Plantation's base on October 13th, 1863 night, resounded to Savannah, where Union brass first deemed Confederate sabotage. The ensuing blaze raged 3 days, devouring manor, slave huts, sheds, and environs. Union probes' formal logs pegged ruin as chance armory blast, likely deserters thieving powder. This was embraced unquestioned, fitting war wreck patterns, and as contrary proof fire obliterated. Probes never learned Victoria's revenge exceeded expectations. Blast, indeed, slew all vault present, but fire razed main house via her placed incendiaries, assuring order deed remnants utter erase. Crucially, her missives to officials arrived, probed by Union conspiracy hunters. These epistles, precise for conviction needs, detailed the sentinels of pristine lineage's roster, deeds, and hid Georgia assets. Post-Willowbrook blaze weeks, odd mishaps befell eminent Georgia planters. Judge Elias Whitaker found dead in Savannah chambers, seemingly from untraceable poisoned claret. Dr. Victor Langston vanished, wholly, carriage forsaken on desolate path, with strife signs sans healer trace.
Captain Marcus Blackwell discovered in quarters, slain by own blade in seeming self-end or vendetta. Union brass, heeding epistle leads, probed other ordermen thoroughly, unearthing decades' offenses. Ledgers seized, titles scrutinized, plots exhumed. Findings affirmed Anon letters' direst claims. Systemic slay, fraud, plot reaching antebellum Georgia's apex. By 1864 close, the sentinels of pristine lineage was effectively shattered. Some fled to Cuba or Britain. Others nabbed and tried diversely. Still others vanished, via self-end, peer slay, or else undetermined. The order's horde, Union seized, founded academies and clinics for emancipated across Georgia. Willowbrook ne'er rebuilt. Land sold for debts, split amid small tillers, ignorant of past.
Locals shunned manor site, deeming soil accursed. Nocturnal odd sounds reported, archaic English voices, phantom coaches on vanished lanes, and grimaced, a maiden humming tunes in unidentified tongue. As decades lapsed, Willowbrook's true saga blurred via myth and deliberate concealment of uneasy verities. Escaped prosecution order kin labored to purge the sentinels of pristine lineage from annals, bribing curators, raising texts, assuring formal Georgia antebellum chronicles stressed palatable plantation facets. But tales endured in Georgia's African-American circles, handed via kin whose forebears eyed or heard order deeds. These yarns, white scholars dismissed as fancy or hyperbole, kept details on covert graveyard, midnight sacraments, and the maiden meeting Willowbrook justice at life cost. In 1889, 26 years post-blaze, Chatham County Courthouse suffered enigmatic fire, razing most antebellum estate and legal logs. Probes found arson signs, but culprit ne'er ID'd. Among survivors, a lone marriage ledger page, dated October 13, 1863, listing Reginald Hawthorne and Victoria Elise Hawthorne. Margin note, right halted, partakers expired. Contemporary scholars studying scant the sentinels of pristine lineage proof oft dismiss extremist claims as war agitprop or post-war scandal puff. They note many assertions concealment impossible from officials, conspiracy scale needing hundreds collusion cross counties. But sporadically, Georgia archive delvers hit texts hinting graver truth, titles showing same clans ruling vast swaths via law/custom defying unions, health logs detailing inbreeding consistent anomalies, plots holding excess graves over official demises, and intriguing fiscal logs showing routine planter payouts to vaguely described folk, whose labors entailed Georgia-wide travel and utter secrecy deeds. In 1963, century post-Willowbrook blaze, builders prepping mall on ex-estate grounds unearthed seeming mass grave with violent death dozens. Find swiftly hushed by locals claiming likely Union troops from unknown Civil War fray. But workers reported non-1860s military artifacts, gold amulets with unidentified glyphs, texts in untranslatable idioms, items official seized, ne'er freed for indie probe. Today, Willowbrook's site holds suburb, whose dwellers sporadically note odd events, nocturnal voices, unlit wood burn scent, equine and coach din on vehicle-free streets, most chalk to fancy or violent past effects. But each October 13th, local law fields calls on area oddities, lights in vacant abodes, music and mirth from partyless spots, and, grimmest, white-gowned maiden glimpses in portals or thresholds vanishing on closer gaze. The verity of Willowbrook Plantation's October 1863 night may ne'er fully surface. Proof raised, witnesses long gone, official logs sanitized from disturbing bits. But Victoria Elise Hawthorne's valor legacy inspires story learners. Testament that in bleakest plights, one's all forfeit for justice can vanquish era's evil. What think you of this yarn? Deem all unveiled, or reckon secrets linger in Georgia marshes? Comment below and share a kin lore from your locale. If relished this and crave more such horrors, subscribe, bell, and share with mystery fans. History's gloom holds myriad arcana we'll unearth together. Till next, probing America's veiled yore.